This is Gilbert Andrew Garcia. Listen to my radio show, A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer every Monday from 11 a.m. till noon on Houston's gospel leader, KWWJ. 1360 AM and streaming live on kwwj.org. Listen on the legendary KYOK 1140 AM and streaming live on kyokradio.org. KCOH 1230 AM, The Source on Sand Geek Radio 95.1 FM 1460 AM and Aliento Radio 101.7 FM and 1540 AM. Call in at 832-570-8075 and follow me on social media. See you then. Houston, here we are with another episode of A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer right here, as you know, like we do every Monday from 11 to 12. And of course, this is your station. This is your hour, Houston. So you should call in about anything at any time that you want to get out. Before we go to my guest, I just wanted to say I had something that was sent to me by Mr. Mazok, and he was just trying to put it in perspective because apparently, I don't know if it was Friday night or over the weekend, the House of Representatives just approved $95 billion for Israel, for Ukraine, and for Taiwan. And I'm sure those are all very worthy things. But think about that for a minute, Houston. $95 billion, just like that. And so Mr. Mazok sent something to me. And this comes from an article, and it goes back to November 20th, 2019. Are you ready for this, everyone? We spent, America, $6.4 trillion just from 2001 to 2019 on wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan. So think about that for a minute. We spent $6.4 trillion, and now we're about to spend essentially another $100 billion. Somebody needs to stop the madness. We need to start spending money here on our own, home front, our own people. We need to start looking at what do we need to improve our infrastructure, to get everybody health care, to get everybody good public schools. I mean, someone needs to stop the madness, because if you think about 6.4 trillion, did we get anything for that? I don't know. That's for Houston and all of us to ponder on our own. I tried to get this wonderful song, but I got to get my copyrights done properly. But it's called Turn, Turn, Turn. Of course, it comes from the Bible. And that's the bird song. And I'm just going to it all goes back to a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to reap, and it goes through all these things. And I think the last refrain says, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. My goodness, someone needs to stop the madness, and we need to start spending all this money on people, especially the people of America, where we need better schools, infrastructure, health care. We all know the needs. We need more affordable housing. You name it, we probably need it. And think about what we could have done with $100 billion and what we could have done with this $6.4 trillion. So, do we have a caller already?
Yes.
Who is it?
Charlene Johnson. Miss Charlene, I'll turn for you now.
Charlene, is that you? I see Mario Lara saying amen. Thank you for those comments already. The comments, keep them going. We're going to have them all episode. Charlene, what do you got there? Charlene, are you there? All right, we're going to keep going. Charlene, can you hear me? That's fine. So I have my special guest. I'm sure she's there, and we'll get her right back. With Miss Leticia Gutierrez of the Air Alliance. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So tell me something, first of all. What is the Air Alliance? Who are you and what do you do?
Yes, again, thank you for inviting me and
You're
for
welcome.
having these conversations. Air Alliance Houston is a nonprofit advocacy organization that strives for cleaner air in our communities. We bridge that gap between communities and our lawmakers and elected officials to make sure that not only are we helping them bring them to some of the issues, environmental injustices that are happening in our communities, but also helping them to enact better laws so that our state regulators can rein in some of the what we call pesky polluters in the area. We strongly believe that where you live should not determine if you live, because if you can believe there's certain zip codes in this city that have different life expectancies, and in my zip code and in my area, it's approximately 12 years less.
Oh my goodness.
Where in other areas it's
Hold that.
actually close to 20 years.
I want to go through that before we go deeper into the Air Alliance,
Sure.
because I know y'all do great work.
Thank
And
you.
of course, I know you're from Houston.
No, I am originally from Mexico.
You're from Mexico. But
But
you've
I've
been in
lived-
Houston how long?
For
A long time.
almost 40 years.
Yeah. And of course, you're only 41 years old. So you've been here. You moved here when you were like 6 months old.
Well,
So let's go back. And you went to what high school again?
I graduated from Milby High School.
Milby, okay.
Go Buffs.
So yeah, so you're a real East Ender and you're a real
Yes.
Houstonian, really.
Yes, I raised my family. We're still, close to the East End, close to where I grew up, where my parents still reside, where most of my family still lives in Pecan Park right now.
Okay, and of course, you have significant experience because I know you worked for a council person in your career and you've done
Yes.
lots of wonderful things.
Yes.
So let's go through this again. So there's actual data that says certain places in the city, if you live there, your life expectancy is much lower than others.
Correct.
Go through that.
So, for instance,
And like where? Give us some of those zip codes or parts of town.
so I didn't bring the data in front
Well,
of me,
just roughly.
but you can definitely go to our website and you can find that
Okay.
information. At the same time, a lot of what is happening, and part of the reason why I got involved into this work is because when my son started developing upper respiratory issues and was just being bombarded with so much medication, it was his pediatrician who looked at my zip code and said, I believe that where you live has something to do with his, triggering upper respiratory issues. I mean, he was having to lug around a breathing machine.
Wow.
At 5 years old.
Oh, come on.
No. And so that's where a lot of this started. I had, unfortunately, a baby cousin who passed away at 6 years old of leukemia. And shortly after, a report from UT Health back in 2009 came out saying that children living 2 to 3 miles from the Port of Houston were 50 times more likely to have childhood cancers and leukemias.
No kidding. And what's going on there? Is it just, I don't know, stuff in the air? Is it stuff in the water? I mean, what do we think is going on?
A lot of it is air pollution, particulate matter 2.5, which, and all your listeners and anyone else can Google, is one of the most dangerous pollutants. It's basically the soot. It's something that is very fine that you cannot see, but you do breathe it in. And so for healthy individuals, we usually just expel it. But for those with immunocompromised, or even sometimes if you are healthy, those particulate matters can attach to your lungs, get into your bloodstream, and cause a whole host of issues, everything from heart disease to upper respiratory to cancers. It's very dangerous for pregnant mothers, for newborn babies, immunocompromised people. So again, this is something that is very serious, and that it's barely starting to really come to light. Because when I first started this work 10 years ago, no one really wanted to talk about it because we get it. We live in what the cool kids call Petro Metro. We're not trying. I mean, in my lifetime, I don't foresee facilities shutting down, but we can try to make sure that they're being held accountable for the things that they're omitting into the air. And so we try to work very closely with, the Port of Houston and all of the other chemical facilities that do take up residency on their property to make sure that they're doing things right. Because unfortunately, we do have state regulators, TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, that we pay taxes for, by the way. You're talking about billions of dollars.
Yeah.
They work for us. And so we constantly get bombarded with them saying that they're underfunded, they don't have the resources, they don't have the things needed in order for them to really do their job. So like if you were to report an environmental complaint, it can go days, sometimes weeks before they come and address it. And by that time, they might have already cleaned it up. And so these are issues that, again, that are plaguing our communities. Unfortunately, it's more predominantly in our Black and Brown communities, in our Hispanic community, who's one of the hardest hits as it pertains to a lot of these environmental concerns. There's a high childhood asthma rate in the East End that needs to be addressed. And I'm not saying just asthma. I'm saying ambulance-related asthma attacks.
Oh my goodness!
In children.
We're going to come back to a lot of this because you just said a whole bunch of things.
I know.
And everything you said, all of a sudden, I feel like I can't breathe right now. I mean, I'm just like,
yeah, that's
you know, I mean, really, I'm just like, think about it because you don't see this stuff in the air.
No, it's invisible.
And you don't really smell it,
most
really.
Of the time, yeah. Well, and sometimes
if you could see it and smell it, then it's really bad.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to come back to it. Let's go to Isidro. I saw, let's get Isidro.
Oh, Isidro's Garza?
I think so.
Oh, Isidro.
There can only be one Isidro.
If it's the Isidro that I know, I certainly welcome him.
Isidro, are you there?
So really quick, Isidro Garza, who's part of LULAC and with Johnny Mata, he has played an integral part in the Project 11 talks that I have put together with.
And I remember. Chronicle did the bond.
We're playing back something on here.
Hello,
Isidro, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mayor, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You got me and Letty. What do you got for us? And by the way, she was just going on and on about all the work that LULAC has done in this regard of talking about clean air and trying to really clean up the air for all the people of color, frankly, that are around all these areas that are the highly polluted areas. But what do you got for us, Isidro?
No. You talked about LULAC. Let's talk about Leticia. She is the greatest.
Isn't she?
She's the one that led the charge for many years and now has gotten some attention. The issue has gotten some attention as to the harm that the dredging of the ship channel. Not that we're against anything that's for progress. We never want to be misinterpreted.
So, I was just going to mention really quick because I haven't had a chance to explain what Isidro's talking about is the Project 11, the Port of Houston's Project 11 that the Army Corps of Engineers is going to be basically overseeing. And there's been some issues with that because what's going to happen is they're going to be dredging a lot of sediment and soil, and they want to dump this soil in Hispanic and Black community, predominantly or mainly in Pleasantville and Galena Park. And so it's not ideal for them to do that. They can't prove to us that it's not contaminated. We have proof that it is contaminated. So all we want is for them to put the sediment somewhere else, not to put it in community that I know that in the past they have dumped on. But it's not fair to continue to do the same things to communities that are already suffering with a whole host of other quality of life issues. And so Isidro has played a huge role as I have brought together the director of EPA, the General Blackman of the Army Corps of Engineers, along with the president and directors of the Port of Houston and also the city's health department, all together to go take a tour of exactly where the communities that we're talking about and that we're trying to fight for. And so Isidro, having the knowledge that he has around engineering and flooding and all the things that, those conversations that we need to on our side, he's been able to provide that in these very important talks that have been very taxing, honestly, because these are like almost 8-hour talks, Isidro, that we have we fly everyone in. We bring them to community to be able to have a conference around Project 11. And as Isidro said, we're not against Project 11. Project 11 is the widening and deepening of the ship channel. And we understand that it's needed because as the goods movement continues to increase, cargo ships continue to get bigger. We do not want the pilots or anyone getting into any sort of accidents that could cause further damage. But at the same time, it's not fair that they're wanting to put contaminated sediment in communities of color.
And how can they possibly, Isidro, how can they possibly tell us that it's not contaminated?
Well,
I mean, all you got to do is check.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
just do a sample, soil sample.
Yes, well, you see, that's where their defense starts. They're saying we've done the testing with, and they have only done 3. Okay, to keep a fact check. And in order to do a project like this, it has to be well studied, sampled, and we've done also a little bit of sampling, not as much as needed for this project, but it's got 235% higher than the highest tolerance allowable for that kind of material. It is carcinogen. It's been proven that it's carcinogen, the materials that are in it. So the question that we always end up asking is, okay, so you all don't live here.
Right.
What if your mother were to live right next to this?
That's right.
Right.
Would you putting it in? Would you still be putting it in? That's
Correct.
it. Bottom line.
Yeah, and that's where community is at right now. They're saying, well, if the Port of Houston, excuse me, if the Port of Houston is saying that it's safe, well, then put it in your backyard, right? Put it in your backyard. Let your kids play with it. Let your family have barbecues back there with it. Because currently Pleasantville, just to give you a really quick history on the Pleasantville community. Pleasantville was a community specifically built back in the early 50s, 1950s, for Black community because they were not allowed to buy anywhere else in the city. By the way, my own neighborhood that I live in Glenbrook Valley, had deed restrictions that colored folk, that those were the language in the deed that were not allowed. It wasn't until recently it was struck out back, I guess, in the 70s or 80s. And it wasn't until Representative Penny Morales Shaw put a bill in place to make sure that it was completely stricken out, not of just my neighborhood, but many other neighborhoods around the state.
Including mine.
Yeah. And so Pleasantville was specifically built for Black community. And soon after it was built and community moved in the early 1960s, 1963, a levee broke in the ship channel. And so what happened is all of that sludge and mud and contaminants flooded the community of Pleasantville.
Wow.
It was a horrific sight. Not to mention, there's still people that live there that remember what happened. They had to go through this muddy, contaminated, mudded water. And, they were never made whole. No one ever came and apologized. No one ever came and made things right. And they are attributing some of their health issues, cancers, other, nervous system, other inflammatory issues, health concerns that they have. They are attributing it to the fact that they were exposed to those contaminants.
Wow. And Isidro, if it were River Oaks,
Yes.
they would have been solved yesterday.
Yes, correct.
Oh my goodness.
So the community, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go, Isidro.
So there was a elderly lady, and she asked a question. She was in the audience, but the first technical palooza was just technocrats in the center of the room, and the audience was outside of the table. And in that scenario, lady asked, "Is anybody going to tell us what was in that material that spilled into our neighborhood? My 2 sons died early in the 40s, 40 years old. And can somebody tell me what was in that material?" And there was a silence for about close to 30 seconds, maybe a minute. It seemed like 20 hours to me. And I had to raise my voice. I had to raise a question. I said, "Is anybody here? Somebody from the port here."
By the way, this was I'm sorry, really quick, just to paint the picture.
Yes.
This happened inside port offices with port officials, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers officials.
Yes.
I mean, it was all the people.
They know. How
Right.
can they
And then-
not know?
well,
Right.
I know. Well, and then finally, I got to give credit. Finally, one of the guys, he's an Aggie, class of '83, from the port. He explained what was in it. He says, "We don't know exactly, but this is what yes, it was contaminated." And so at least we're all, as a community and business, coming together and trying to come up with the best way of deepening and widening the channel, but do it in a conscientious
Well, in
manner.
an equitable way. I mean, it's not because, as one council member, I won't say their name, but she said, that the port belongs to everyone. And that's true. The port does belong to everyone because we were trying to get a community person on the port commission seat because we feel that, if we do have community on those seats that, we'll have
Well,
better decision
it belongs
making.
to everyone, but the sludge shouldn't just belong to one community.
Correct. So that's why we said, well, then wait. Well, and she happens to reside on the west side, and we said, well, then maybe we should have some of that dredging material on the west side as well.
That's since it belongs to everybody.
Right, since it belongs to everyone.
Actually, you're absolutely correct because the law has been, and I hope it will always be, it's called cradle to grave.
Yeah.
Whomever created it is responsible for it. Now, if it goes in and goes into the ship channel, as you're en route, so it belongs to us when we accept it, and then we're going to transfer it, we the city or the port. And so we're responsible for that. And who wants to be responsible for reducing the life of anybody, irrespective of their, the color of their skin?
Well, let me do. I know we've got a bunch of callers, Isidro.
Okay.
Isidro, I'm going to give you one more minute. What do you want to say to Houston?
I sure wish you were the mayor. I'm not saying anything bad about the mayor that we have now. I just know that there's so many issues that come up that I say, oh man, if Gilbert were the one that we have to go with, it would be already solved. You continue doing what you're doing. You're a great person, and the day will come when we will have an Hispanic mayor, and that Hispanic mayor is going to be Gilbert Garcia.
Well, that warms my heart. And let's get the GLO here on the phone sometime or here in person because I know we don't have the time, but our land commissioner just did something incredible by getting Houston more time on the Harvard money and so forth. And what an extraordinary thing that she did together with the mayor, together with the county commissioners and everybody else. And you know what? We'll talk about that at another show. Isidro, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Yes, sir. Let's go to, I think we have, yes, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think we have Jarvis Johnson on there. Let's get Jarvis on the phone. Representative, are you there?
Representative Johnson?
Representative, are you there?
I'm going to transfer you to Gilbert. 1 moment.
Representative, are you there? Representative.
He's there.
Representative, can you hear me? It's Gilbert Garcia.
Hey, how you doing? I can hear you well.
All right. By the way, I have your website here on social media that everybody's looking at your great picture. And I've got Leticia Gutierrez of Air Alliance here on the phone. I mean, not on the phone, in person. But I really am grateful that you called because I saw the great news and I want to share it with our listeners. And of course, you're on 5 stations right now. That you got the Chronicles endorsement for Senate District, is it 15?
Yes, 15.
For 15. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, I'm great. I feel good. I mean, the fact that, we've been here and down this road before, and I lean on my experience and knowing that when you do the work and you answer the call of the people and you do the work of the people, that they'll respect and respond back to that. And so it's always good when you get people's endorsement because they see the work that you've done and they see the progress that you made and look at the future and say, yep, that's who we want to represent us. So it absolutely feels fantastic when people do recognize the work and want to support you in that regard. So,
well, I want to go back because, you earned this. This wasn't something that, you just like interviewed well. You've been involved in government service, you and actually your family and people. Just give us a 1 minute there about that, because that's ingrained in your DNA to give back.
Yeah, I started my life at, as a young boy working alongside my mother, who used to work with the late Congressman Mickey Leland. She's always been involved in campaigns. And while I didn't get bit by the bug working in politics until later on in life, and I was about 22, I was running an after-school program in the 5th Ward called Phoenix Outreach Youth Center. And the Houston Rockets supported our program. They built this beautiful building, but unfortunately, we didn't have an occupancy permit. And the city shut our program down, even though we were doing this great work with these kids in this community, but they shut the program down. And we all went down to City Hall to get help. And it was like, everybody was like, oh, you're doing such great work. And they kind of patted me on my head and sent me on my way. And I said, that's not what elected officials are supposed to do. And right then I made the decision to run for office. And I ran for city council and won. And And the rest is history after that.
That is a wonderful story. And how wonderful about your mom. Let me ask you this. What are some of the key issues there in Senate District 15? And what do you think that you're going to bring, or what are the first 2 or 3 things that you want to take on?
Well, I mean, I think the issues of Senate District 15 are kind of mirrors a lot of the issues across this state right now. I mean, we've gotten into really, culture wars of how we're trying to protect our communities. But, to protect women's reproductive rights is always going to be at the top of the list right now, just because of what's happening nationally. And then, of course, what the governor and lieutenant governor are trying to do here to push this narrative about, taking away women's rights to make a decision, the best decision for their bodies and for their future. And then, of course, we got to protect voting rights. At every stop, that there's always an attack on trying to take away people's ability to vote, when that should be the main staple of this country, is to give the people the right to pick and choose leadership that is representative of themselves. And then we're going to education right now. The state of Texas is pushing really hard to take away public education, take away people's ability to have properly funded education. And so, those are the things. And of course, this attack on DEI, with people not understanding truly what DEI really is, when it's not a mandate to hire anybody or to put anybody in place. It's just simply a welcoming mat that says, hey, we want you to come over here. If it's a good fit, come on in. There's so many different variations of what DEI is, and it's not just a color thing, but it's for the people with disability, for the governor himself. Wheelchair ramps are what we consider DEI, because it says we understand the situation you're in, and we're going to make it better for you to be able to come into this building. But the governor doesn't think that. He just thinks, he thinks this is a black and white thing, or Latino thing, and it's not. And
well,
so that's why
you brought up something that I wanted to bring up, and I'm so glad you're on the phone. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Representative. I'm just going through an article that I saw in the Chronicle on April 20th. It's at the bottom of the fold for those there that can see me right down below here. And it talked about, I'm just going to read the headline. UT lays off over DEI were mostly women, people of color. So I'm just going to paraphrase. In all, the university says it let go 49 staffers as part of their DEI restructuring. And it talks about all the people that they let go. And they're almost all women and people of color. Some of them who have worked there at the university for 20, 30 years. I mean, it's unbelievable, Representative, that people are taking something and they're using it to achieve probably their own racist tendencies that they wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah. Well, it's so hard for certain people who are entitled to believe that there are other people in this world and in their community that are smarter than them, that have a better resolve than them, that work harder than them to achieve the goals that they got. And so then they start moving around and saying, oh, you're only here because of your race. You're only here because of your gender. You're only here. And that's so easy for them to do. That is so easy for them to do. And it clears their conscience to make people believe, well, he's only here because, let
me tell you one here then, Representative. I went to Yale, and I'm proud of that, of course. But you know what, something, Representative? Do you know who has the best chance to get into Yale? It's not the African Americans. It's not the Hispanics. It's not the athletes. It's the legacies, which means people whose parents went there. And guess who they all are? So in other words, if you're going to really take on affirmative action, then let's get rid of it everywhere. And then let's just make this an equal playing field for all. So the cream will rise to the top if you let it. Well, Representative, I am so grateful that you're running. And I know that we need you to go raise hell. And of course, there's a lot of demeanor there on the Senate side. I guess that's supposed to be the gentleman's side. At the end of the day, we just got to raise hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, there's no, look, I'm a gentleman with those that are gentlemanly. And
there you go.
Friends with those that are friendly. But but I'm not going to be rational with people who want to be irrational. That's just not my demeanor. So at the end of the day, you want to bring a little crazy, I got a little crazy for you.
Amen.
I believe in decorum, but at the end of the day, I don't believe in you spitting in my face, calling it rain, and then you get insulted when I slap you back because, oh my God, I can't believe you hit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe you hit. Don't hit if you don't expect to get hit back. But this is that sometimes they get into that world of privilege where they think they can just do anything they want without repercussions, without consequences. And I think that's what makes me the best candidate because, at the end of the day, I understand how this process works. I understand how the importance of getting bills passed and understand how to get bills passed. Unfortunately, my opponent is running around telling everybody that I'm a MAGA Republican now, that I take all of this dark Republican money as if I'm supposed to be now a puppet for the Republicans. That's the most crazy thing in the world. But the fact is that my opponent doesn't understand how votes are made and how bills are created. Oftentimes, because we are in the democracy, we are Democrats, that we don't get a lot of our bills take a lot of work to get passed.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans they can pass their bills without batting an eyelash. But now what's important is that sometimes if you want to amend those bills, we can amend them to mitigate some of the damage that they could be doing to us. So we oftentimes vote to amend these bills. And when you amend the bills to make them less evil or less hurtful to the community, then you're going to vote for that bill, And so, unfortunately, inexperienced people who simply wanted to be black or white, it's just, we're only going to do either this way or that. Otherwise, no. Well, that's not how politics is. It's all about a compromise.
Well, do me a favor. I want to make sure I'm going to have you back. Actually, I need to have you on my show. But Representative, tell everybody your website. What events do you got going or something? I want to make sure people know.
Well, you can go to jarvisfortexas.com and just go check it out. If we're always having events. We just had a lot of events over the weekend. I wish I would have got on the show and told everybody about them, but we just did a big senior citizen event for the seniors out here in the community. And then I did a big fun festival crawfish festival for all my volunteers. And
oh, wonderful!
It was all great. So that happened this weekend. But we're gonna have a lot of good things coming up. You just go jarvisfortexas.com and check us out. Well, we'll be doing good stuff.
Representative, thank you and for doing the Lord's work. Go give them hell. And I like that. I don't know. I got to paraphrase you, but something about, and if they're going to be crazy, I got a little crazy too, and I'll bring it. Representative, thank you so much. And soon we'll be calling you Senator. And come back on the show, okay?
Right on. Absolutely will. Thank you for the.
Thank you, my friend.
Opportunity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got it. Before we go to our next caller, I want to go back to this whole thing. Project 11?
Correct.
Okay. Go back to that. So that's about opening up the port.
Yes.
Right? And they have to go in there and dig in because I guess they're making the port wider and deeper. Is that?
The canal.
To make heavier and bigger ships come through.
Correct.
And I guess to do that, you got to go in there and get all the soil.
Right.
And can't you do soil samples?
So we've done our own soil sampling, and some of the results that have came back that are still preliminary are, as Isidro mentioned, off the charts. A lot of carcinogens, a lot of heavy metals, a lot of, one would be really crazy to think that, it's not contaminated, because the other part is some of what we were asking EPA was to, not necessarily force them because they can't, but ask the Army Corps to at least, dump it in the ocean or take it a little further east up the canal where there isn't community. Unfortunately, the Army Corps of Engineers does not have to test for human life, but they do have to test for marine life. So if they're going to dump it in the ocean, there's even heavier restrictions around that. And so that is part of the reason why they don't want to dump it, because they know that they're probably going to get in a pickle if they were to do that.
Well, hold back for a second. So you have taken samples and tested it, but they have too. And what do they say?
To Isidro's point, it's not, even I'm really reluctant to mention, but
don't say anything you can't. So go ahead.
I know. So there were some people in the room that are experts that were not necessarily on our side per se about the project, but did speak up to those
Mhm.
results. And they had a lot of questions. And I quote one of them that works inside our city's health department that said the math just doesn't seem like it's mathing here.
Well, let me ask you this. So, like, how much dirt is going to be moved? Is this like, like as much dirt that would be like as tall as the Empire State Building? I mean, give me some sort of, it's got to be a lot of dirt. I mean, you can't just go dump it somewhere. You got to like create a big hole or something, right?
So I don't have those exact measures, but it is a lot.
It's got to be tons.
Correct. And so as what, the father of environmental justice, Dr. Bullard, says, here in Houston, anytime you see hills or, small mountains, that those are not natural. Those are man-made, and they're usually places of contamination. And that's exactly, if you go down to Pleasantville, Clinton Park, Galena Park, you will see hills and valleys, and that those are all have been dumping sites for the Port of Houston. Because by the way, there's a reason why it's called Project 11. This isn't the first time that they've obviously widened the canal, and so every single time that they are doing this, they are dumping in these same communities. And so they feel, well, we've been doing this for decades. What is the big deal of continuing to do it? Well, it is a huge deal. We should not be doing it in the first place.
And just because you've been doing it for decades doesn't mean it's right.
Correct.
Because you wouldn't want to live there.
Correct.
Well, it just is amazing to me. And, I had an experience with contamination when I was Metro chairman, as you know.
Mhm.
And I got a lot of pushback from some people because we wanted to go underneath the railroad tracks there right around Harrisburg.
Yes.
And we were digging. And of course, this is transparent Gilbert, right?
Right.
Because that's who I am.
Right.
Everywhere we drilled, we found contamination.
Yep.
And of course, it's so interesting how different it's the opposite side of what's happening with the port. So many people said, well, they didn't believe us that we found contamination. We're like, here it is.
Right.
And how could you not think there's contamination?
Right.
Because the East End is where a lot of in the old days where they had a lot of
Industrial facilities.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And so everywhere we went, we found contamination.
Right.
So if we found it just going into the soil,
Right.
just there, whatever it was, 20 feet deep, imagine way under the ground,
Right.
where we've had all these ships and all these things going through.
Right. And all the
oil
chemical-
spills
yeah.
and all the
Yeah.
plants.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that's just it. I mean, we just, we want this to be done fair and equitable and in a manner in which, again, we do not continue to dump on the most vulnerable communities amongst us. Look, we already have cancer clusters in the city. We already have what we call sacrifice zones in the city.
Okay, hold that
Yeah,
thought. I
sure.
want to know what a cancer zone, what'd you call it?
Cancer cluster.
I want to know what that means.
Okay.
And we have another, I think we have representative.
Yeah, we need to call her as soon as you get.
Okay. Well, then we'll come back. Do we have another person holding?
Josh.
Josh? Let's put Josh on.
Sure.
Hello, Josh.
Josh, are you there?
Hello. One moment.
Josh, are you there? Josh, are you there?
He's there.
Josh.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. This is Gilbert Garcia of A Tip from Gilbert with the Air Alliance, one of the main Air Alliance warriors, Miss Leticia Gutierrez. What do you got for us?
Hi. So Letty spoke about the importance of zip code and where you live in determining health. I wanted to know that since just moving away is not an option for everyone, is there any way to limit the impact of things like particulate matter and airborne hazards on your health while still living in some of these areas?
That's an excellent question, which is part of the reason why I started doing this work is because I didn't want to move. 80% of my family that lives here in Houston, we all live within 2 to 3 miles of each other, including my 3 siblings. And so, part of what you can do is being aware of where you live. We are also, in the process of continuing to expand our air monitoring system. Currently, there are these low-cost air monitors called Purple Air monitors. So if you go to purpleair.com, just purpleair.com, and you type in your zip code, you're going to see hopefully some air monitors in your area, and it'll tell you, it has a gauge there to basically explain, it only measures for particulate matter 2.5, unfortunately. But as I mentioned, that's one of the most dangerous pollutants.
But so 2.5, that's the name of the particular pollutant?
Yes, particulate matter 2.5 is the size of the pollutant. Yes.
Okay, and so is that but that's still like microscopic. I mean, that's like teeny.
Correct.
But what is it? Is it just?
So it's basically the byproduct of anytime that you burn something, anytime, emissions, anything that is burning, it's basically soot, right? It's, the EPA, for instance, just recently changed the rules on that. It used to be 12 parts per cubic yards, and they reduced it to 9, which, by the way, that would put us in non-attainment here in this area, which means we're not even meeting the previous rules that the EPA had set forth. And now that they're making them a little stronger, and they call it the soot rule, which is basically a byproduct of any time that you burn anything, there's going to be some.
So we're already not meeting. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but we're not meeting EPA standards now.
Currently, the way that it stands, as EPA is trying to roll this new rule out, no, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to obtain that. And the way that our state regulators work, unfortunately, it's not, how can I say this? It's very difficult, since for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, because they're underfunded. It's very hard for them to rein in a lot of the issues that we currently have, and they allow a lot of industrial facilities to self-report because they themselves can't.
Self-reporting is terrible.
Correct.
Because they're not going to report.
Correct. I mean, we have an issue right now, for instance, with TPC. That is on Park Place. Now, this is the same TPC that blew up in Port Neches. Same company, different location. Port Neches had to evacuate back in 2019. The day before Thanksgiving, people's homes were leveled out. Businesses have still been closed. And TPC shortly after declared bankruptcy purposely so that they wouldn't pay out a penny to them. And so after that happened, the TPC that, by the way, that's here, I happen to live less than 2 miles away from that. And if this TPC, which by the way has way more violations than the TPC in Port Neches, if this TPC were to blow up, the whole city of you would feel the aftershock all the way over here to your office building.
Wow. Go back to his question.
So his question,
which is, what can we do? So number one, you can have these meters that tell you.
So when you see particulate matter, high in your area, the best thing to do is to stay indoors, especially for the vulnerable populations that I mentioned earlier. The other thing that you should also do is sign up to our newsletter and see any campaigns that we currently have going on. One of our biggest things right now is trying to gain support to go to the ledge this time next year, to ask our elected officials to make sure that, we are being protected by the state regulators that we pay taxes for. And so that's where a lot of the laws come in. And that's where a lot of, the help that we need from community to, again, no matter where you live, even if you do live on the west side, because I tell everyone, every now and then those chemicals and those issues will spew over to different zip codes. And so this pertains to all of us. So it's important for you to keep your elected officials engaged, informed, and letting them know that you are paying attention to how they're, basically processing a lot of the issues and laws that need to happen in order to hold polluters accountable. And other than that, I mean, I'm not a doctor per se, but if you are experiencing any issues, make sure that you do mention those to your medical provider. And, I have various indoor air purifiers and all the things for the reasons that I explained. And so I can't tell you which one to use. I would say Google and use your best judgment. But living here in the city of Houston, unfortunately, we are plagued with a lot of air pollution. And even myself sometimes have to drive a little bit further west to enjoy the outdoor spaces because it's sometimes not the best to do in my side of town.
Oh, I'm crying just to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow. Any follow-up to the question there?
Did you have any other questions, Josh?
the only follow up I'd have is correct me if I'm wrong, but things like concrete batch plants also contribute to particulate matter.
Yes, actually,
So
Gilbert.
that's the next one.
Gilbert had me on your show a
Yeah.
few months ago regarding that.
Yeah, let's go to this whole. You used the phrase. So there was a phrase you said.
Cancer cluster.
Yeah. So what is that versus the concrete batch plant? What? Just go through all this vocabulary for our listeners.
Sure. Well, a cancer cluster is basically an area that has deemed because of families basically in generations being wiped out due to cancer. And it takes a long time for a community or an area to be labeled a cancer cluster. It has to be, a whole block of people having the same elements, the same things. And it's unfortunate that we have to wait. So, for, again, families to die, because unfortunately here in Fifth Ward, where Union Pacific was had the rail yards where they were consistently dumping creosote back in the 50s and 60s. And so that creosote seeped into the soil, went into the water system. And during droughts, this, dirt kicks up and the dust, people breathe in that area. And so a whole host of community in that area has either gotten cancer, has gotten sick, a whole host of nervous issues, nervous system issues, and just, everyone from the child to the dad to the grandmother, either getting cancer and dying or getting cancer and barely surviving.
Wow.
And so again, these are the types of things that we're trying to shed light on so that we don't continue to do these types of, environmental racism, just injustices to communities that are already vulnerable. We're talking about communities that, have food deserts, don't have access to public transportation, don't have access to, sidewalks, don't have access to green spaces. You're adding all of these layers, not to mention, little to no access to healthcare, right? And so you're putting all of these layers in place. And that is something that we've been fighting for as well, for our state regulators to understand that when you do open a concrete batch plant, that you look at where you're allowing these plants to pop up. Are you allowing this plant to pop up near a community that may already have one a mile away? Are you opening up another plant because, again, they may have a daycare center or a school or a playground? Because, by the way, in East Aldine, this is the most sad story that you will ever read. It was a brand new park that the county, that Adrian Garcia had just opened up. It was an all-inclusive park for children, for elder adults to take part in. They were having outdoor activities and all kinds of things for senior citizens to be able to stay mobile and active, and for their mental health, all the things. Well, lo and behold, literally months later, a concrete batch plant was allowed to pop up next door.
How can that be?
Exactly.
Where's the permitting process or something?
Well, unfortunately, TCEQ does not. They don't take into account really anything. I've been coined saying that TCEQ hands out these permits out like candy. Like anyone, you can apply for a concrete batch plant and you can pop it up. Well, as not on the west side.
Yeah.
Not on the west side, but if northeast, east, and southeast, you're good. And what's happening is what I'm calling, and the community is calling, modern day redlining, because you're devaluing people's properties. And the more they get devalued, the more they come and buy this cheap property, and the more, contamination that they're doing. And it's just becoming this huge epidemic in our area. And so, by the way, just last week, the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, sent a letter to TCEQ to halt concrete batch plants, but he only is saying, he's asking for the whole state, but he's mainly doing it because there's an affluent community north of Dallas in Sherman, Texas, where there's a huge plant getting ready to open and community doesn't want it. And so the problem with that is it doesn't encompass all of the other rock crushing cement plants, all the other aggregates that continue to pollute in this area. It's only for that specific type of aggregate. So the mayor, my understanding, he verbally told me at the Hispanic Chamber that he is asking the Lieutenant Governor to, encompass all of the aggregates, because, by the way, there is a concrete, well, it's a rock crusher, which is the same as a concrete batch plant, except they spew more chemicals into the air, that got the green light to open up next to the LBJ hospital.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I don't know if you've heard about that.
No,
one.
I did not. I need to put that on my show.
Yes, you do. You need to bring some
Yeah.
of the community leaders that are doing God's work right now to push back on this permit that unfortunately has already been given the green light to.
Well, first of all, before I move on,
Yeah.
is there another question though that you had a follow up? All right, I think we're ready for it. Let's get our next caller. Do we have representative?
Hi, Yvette Dueñas.
Okay, let's go ahead and get. So we don't have the representative. Okay, Yvette, are you there? Is there Yvette Dueñas on the line?
Yes, she is.
Yvette.
Hello? Yes.
We're
hello,
talking
Gilbert.
about all kinds of great things here. Sometimes you sound like a scientist or something, you know?
I have to say that I'm not, but
Well,
I
you
have
sound like one.
I have really good friends and colleagues that are, and they're the ones who arm me with a lot of the things that are needed for us to be able to,
Well,
to tell community about these things so that they can arm themselves whenever they talk.
you could play a scientist on TV. So go ahead there, Yvette. What do you got for us?
I say you truly are a scientist. I mean,
Right?
just the
Oh
ins and
my
outs of
God.
Understanding the air quality that we breathe in every day from a day-to-day basis, the areas you live in, to understand that in itself as well. But my kind of, follow-ups with Justice's question, from a personal experience, my husband's a firefighter here in Houston. He used to work in the 5th Ward in the Kashmir Gardens area.
Mhm.
And that, he was there for 2 years. And, I saw news last year recently come up as that was a cancer cluster area.
Correct.
And, it's just very unfortunate that, for certain government, for folks that's serving the community and have a duty to serve the community, to have to go in, week after week and breathe the chemicals, the oils, everything that affects your life. And I know you just provided some clarity on purple air monitors and, different things that folks can do to prevent cancer. But are those enforced at fire stations or are they not?
That's an excellent question. I have 2 family members, one of which that are in the Houston Fire Department, one of which is in Magnolia, which is close to the port. And so, they've had a couple of colleagues that have passed away of cancer. And so, they call me and ask me the same questions. I'm not a scientist and obviously not a doctor. And so, but, the reason that we have a lot of this information is, these days we have access to information via Google, and not that, but I feel that a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now has to do with trying to enact better laws. And so, that's where the mayor comes in, and that's where our elected representatives come in, and that's where our senators come in to make sure that they're protecting us. Unfortunately, a lot of the data that we are currently capturing, with whether it's a purple air or, an APIS monitor that you can look up on our website, it tells you all the things that monitor basically measures for. It's benzene, butadiene, that are highly carcinogenic. And, it's the norm. They are allowed to spew this in Houston, in Texas, I should say. The Valeros here in Houston are allowed to spew hydrogen cyanide. Hydrogen cyanide is a very poisonous gas. By the way, my family lives in Pecan Park, which is a hop, skip, jumping away from Manchester, where Valero resides. But you know what? Valero in California isn't allowed to spew hydrogen cyanide there.
How can that be?
Exactly.
And why can't they use whatever they're doing over here?
Correct.
Just to be good guys.
Because our state representation allows it. They just allow it. They just feel that it's, they're making money. And the thing is that, your Valeros and, even your TPCs, they go into these area high schools, like my alma mater, Milby. My children were zoned to Chavez High School. They go into these neighborhoods and they dole out, baby scholarships. And they use students during the hearings whenever they're applying for these hydrogen cyanide permits. And they ask students to come up and speak in their favor.
Oh, come on.
And the student, I mean, and I'm no one to
what do
tell
they know?
students,
Yeah.
right? And I'm no one to tell the students do not accept money, right? Because it is a scholarship, but it's technically a check that they give them for anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000. And this is probably the most money families in this area
Oh,
have seen.
yeah.
And I would never say do not take the money. However, I do have to tell students you're not obligated to come and do their dirty work, because they come up to the mic and they come up to the hearing and they come up to our state regulators and say, I am the first one in my family to go to college and they deserve this permit. And they don't know. And so we try to go into schools and we try to educate community, and we try to also let our firefighters know that, you know, they have power as well. You know, they have power to speak up and tell our elected representatives. I know they have a whole host of other, you know, issues that they're trying to fight for, and as they should. At the same time, you know, Chief Pena has gone up to the ledge with us to ask for better laws around, you know, knowing what it is, certain chemicals that they're fighting. There was a box cart and one of the trains that caught on fire a few years ago, and they were sent to go put it out, but they didn't know what was burning. And sometimes we're not allowed to know, communities not allowed to know what's passing through. That's a whole other issue, but just knowing the chemicals that are in our area, what's burning, how to be able to have better laws. And certainly HFD has some power.
I want to get one more, Ms. Dueña, if you don't mind. I've got one more call I want to make sure I get in, because she was holding for quite some time. So hopefully you'll call next week and we'll get you in again. Representative, are you there? Representative, are you there?
She's there.
Representative.
Yes, good morning.
It's Gilbert Garcia. Welcome to A Tip from Gilbert with me. And right now, my guest is Leticia Gutierrez of Air Alliance. How are you, Representative?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I know you were on hold earlier. And let me ask you this, because I want to make sure. Tell us about the race. I know you're in a runoff. And tell us all about that. And what are all the days? It seems to be confusing right now of what are the days that you have to vote. There's 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken, here in May.
Yeah. Yes. So I guess I'll start with that first. Just for your listeners, I'm Sean Theory. I'm the state representative for House District 146 in Houston. And that encompasses some really great diverse areas. I guess we'd say the heart of the district is at NRG Stadium. And it goes out on the southwest side to Sharpstown, Westbury, a little bit of Meyerland. And then coming back into the city on the southeast side, I represent historic communities like Sunnyside, Crestmont, South Park, South Union, and the historic Third Ward where the famous Beyonce grew up. And so I have lived in my district my whole life. And so we had a March 5th primary, and I'm the Democrat incumbent state rep. The runoff, I'm now in a runoff. I need a few more votes to push me over the top, everyone. And so that runoff is on May 28th. Early vote starts May 20th through the 24th. Only 4 days this time, everybody. We don't get a week of early voting on this one. 4 days of early voting. And election day is the day after Memorial Day. That's a way to remember that one. But just don't get too sunburned or tipsy, because I need you to come back out and vote. Yeah, no, not too much beer and barbecue.
Amen.
The other race that you probably are referring to, there is a special election May 4th. And I think you all just got to talking about that one. That one has a Senate race, and it has those HCAD positions.
Yes.
It's a Harris County Appraisal District position.
Well, Representative, I want to know, because I'm running out of time. What's your website, and what are all the events you've got going, or how do people get involved in your campaign? Because I've heard a lot of people say things, and you know what? Some things they're saying just is not right, because I've read some of those. But give us all that, please.
Okay, sure. So my website is runningwiththeory.com.
Oh, I love that. Runningwiththeory.com.
You're running this race with me. I can't do it by myself. RUNNING with theory. Now, theory is spelled T as in terrific, HIERRY, runningwiththeory.com. But the best place to find me is on Facebook. Sean Theory, or you can go to Rep Theory. I'm on Instagram, Rep Theory 146. And so if you just go to my social media, you can just comment or drop a line in my inbox, and I'll always respond. And so I just want people to know that I'm here for the people. I've done a lot of great work in the community, from protecting our public schools. I'm a product of public schools. I passed the panic button bill this session. It's the first one in Texas that puts silent panic alert technology in every public school in the state of Texas. Lowered your property taxes so people can hardworking families can stay in their homes. I've got the endorsement from Houston Black American Democrats, as well as the Latino Labor Leadership Council. So I am working really hard, and I would just love to have you all support. Please come back in the runoff.
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call you offline because I want to book you to be one of my guests.
Okay.
Between here, of course, and election day, so we can have a whole hour with you to talk about all the things that you're trying to do. And would that be okay with you?
I would love it. I love it. I love talking to the folks and want you guys to be informed. And so I would be honored, Gilbert, to come back and sit down with you all.
Well, consider that done. I will call you offline later on this afternoon. So thank you very much for being on the show.
Wonderful. Everyone have a wonderful, blessed day.
Wonderful. You too. So real quick, Letty, you got 1 minute because we're out of time already. Isn't it amazing how fast an hour goes? Just like that. I feel bad with Representative because I know she was also on so patiently waiting. That's why I'm going to have her on the show. But you tell me one more. Where did we go? What's your website? What's the first time y'all are going back to the ledge? Go for it. Everything.
Sure. Well, I just have to disclose, just to make sure that the organization does not support or endorse candidates. I just have to put that out there anytime there's candidates running around me. But, we do ask candidates and our elected officials, as they both were, that whenever we are at the ledge and we continue to push forward on these issues, I get that, we are under, certain control. At the same time, there's ways to be able to do things, just like they found all this money to be able to go to war. There's ways to be able to find money to do things right.
What's the website? Everything else.
So our website is airalliancehouston.org. And just FYI, we had our first, so Air Alliance Houston is also a part of the Healthy Ports Community Coalition that makes up 6 other member organizations, including Bayou City Waterkeeper, and just a whole host of other organizations.
If people want to reach you, how do we do that?
If you go to the website, my email is Leticia, Leticia, @airalliancehouston.org. And, shoot me an email and I'll certainly be happy to get back to you. Just FYI, we had our first annual East End Earth Day yesterday in Hidalgo Park. It went great. Texas Children's came out and did amazing with the children. Had some other partners showing people how to do compost. And so, and I just want to thank you as well, because you've always been so supportive of us and the issues and allowing us to reach community and continue the great work, because like my daughter says, we love Texas. We just want to make sure Texas loves us back.
Amen. On that note, we're going to be signing off. This is Gilbert Garcia of a Tip Gilbert saying, please, we'll see you next time. This is Gilbert Andrew Garcia. Listen to my radio show, A Tip from Gilbert. Talk, inspiration, and prayer every Monday from 11 a.m. till noon on Houston's gospel leader, KWWJ. 1360 AM and streaming live on kwwj.org. Listen on the legendary KYOK 1140 AM and streaming live on kyokradio.org. KCOH 1230 AM, The Source on San Geek Radio 95.1 FM 1460 AM and Aliento Radio 101.7 FM and 1540 AM. Call in at 832-570-8075 and follow me on social media. See you then.